the attention turning to the Supreme Court nominee, and also, first of all, have you heard anything new as far as Clarence Thomas is concerned and his health?
I haven't. I heard that his wife was asking for a prayer for him, acknowledging God's goodness in spite of it. So it didn't sound like he was on a deathbed, certainly.
Yeah.
But you never like to see folks having to be hospitalized.
This nominee is kind of interesting. It's not the person that most of the conservatives would like to have had, the least liberal of the batch or the number of people that he had put forth and a list of names. But your thoughts on her, Professor Green? What do you think about her? Her name is Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think it is Ketanji or Ketanji. I think it's Ketanji.
That's the kind of thing I'm always goofing up. So I'm trying to think how many times I heard it last. It was always Judge Jackson yesterday. But Ketanji, they're not going to call the whole thing off.
Yeah. She'll probably be known as KBJ, who has a pretty good ring to it, so who knows. But your thoughts on her from what you've learned and studied thus far?
Well, so I'm always fascinated by nomination hearings, not so much by what they always tell you about what someone thinks, but it's always what the people who know their politics think that people want to hear. So when Justice Kagan said, "We're all originalists now," at one point in her hearing, that I think tells you something very important about what people are wanting their Supreme Court justices to say they're committed to. So, so we had a brief statement from Judge Jackson last night. She chose to spend almost the entire statement thanking her mentors. She had a lot of them, and mentors across the aisle. She clearly is able to befriend Republicans quite closely. Which I think is a good sign. Justice Kagan, Justice Ginsburg were quite famous for being able to do that kind of thing. So it doesn't particularly indicate anything about her philosophy. When she got to talking about the role of a judge, she really didn't say that much. She didn't affirmatively say, "I believe in a living constitution." She didn't say anything quite as strong as what Kagan said, that we're all originalists now. Kagan herself said that in response to a question. So I'll be, certainly looking to see what she says. She did mention her love of the Constitution. She suggested that, we have an old Constitution, which I think is an important thing for everybody to be able to acknowledge. We all live under a Constitution that was adopted by the framers. And that's, the Constitution, taking an oath to the Constitution, everybody takes the same oath. That's an important element in binding us all together. She did strike some notes about the job of a judge binding everybody together and allowing us to live in a society where we're equal citizens. I don't think she used exactly that language, but those are all themes that, those are constitutional themes that the Constitution really does do those things. So that was encouraging as far as it went. She didn't have a whole lot to say specifically about some of the more contentious issues of judicial philosophy, but she'll certainly be pressed on those. And, to the extent that she sort of squirms around, she kind of has a choice to kind of say something small and limited and, that'll be true, that everybody can agree with, or she can really try to evade the question. Or she could launch into she could come up with a full-throated defense of a really different perspective that could, I guess the president's people got to look at the map of the Senate and see how many senators are in play for these different strategies. So,
how long do you think this is? How long do you think this is going to go on as far as the hearings itself?
It depends on, I think the chair of the Judiciary Committee, sometimes the first day is really quite long. So I guess I would encourage people to have contingency plans for their dinner to eat at their desk today. I think we usually have 2 days of questioning and then a panel of some other folks. So the ABA, I was helped a little bit behind the scenes with some testimony on one of the later days. But that's when the professors come in. So we're all excited to see what professorial allies she has.
Let me ask you this. One of the major things, put party aside, and I know that's very difficult to do, but one of the things that most law professors and most of the lawyers on the Senate hearing side, certainly the Republicans, want to know is, does she have the experience? Does she have the resume? Does she have the background to handle this job as far as its importance with a lifetime appointment at that level of the law? Can she handle this? Is she qualified? And I think that ought to be number one. I think I did hear her something, or I read she said something about she would follow the Constitution. I can't find that in here now, but I think she said something like that yesterday. But the thing that she was, number one, can she handle, does she have the experience to interpret the laws at that level? And number two, she was taking to task yesterday, and again, it was kind of a cursory warm-up on some of her rulings in her prior position as a judge as far as child porn cases. Would you address those two things?
So first, in terms of just general experience, so she was a judge on the district court, the trial court for the District of Columbia. And that is, I think without question, the most important trial court in the country. So she is dealing with one very, very big case she had to do with a subpoena to Harriet Miers, very, very fundamental issues of separation of powers between Congress and the executive branch. I mean, really, she is eating stress for breakfast in that job. And she handled that, I think, extremely well. Her opinion in that case is very, very long. One thing she said, if you read my opinions, you'll notice they're very, very thorough and very, very long. She doesn't, I would say she's not trying to make her opinions be witty or kind of, beautiful works of art. She really has a thoroughness about her. The aspects of experience that I would be looking for in terms of the Constitution would be things like willingness to dredge through millions of words of history during Reconstruction or the founding. I haven't, it's very hard to know how interested she is in doing that kind of thing. She certainly has a passion for thoroughness that's one of the ingredients you need. In terms of some of the sentencing things, I think it's clear that she has a view. It's clear that she's long held views that the criminal justice system incarcerates more people for longer than it should. Yeah. But I don't think it would be right to say she's on this. I
want to ask you some of her weak points or where she may get in trouble on this when we come back. But there is a fun fact in here that everybody's talking about. I say a fun fact. It's a little bit of an oddity. Her husband has a twin brother named William Jackson, who, for a fun fact, is actually married to someone named Dana Little Jackson. And Dana Little Jackson is the sister of former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. In Washington, D.C., it's all one big happy family. Back more with the law professor Christopher Green coming up next. Linder back with law professor, University of Mississippi, Christopher Green. What do you think some of the weak points are in here? And the Republicans are not going to be as tenacious as the Democrats were in the Supreme Court nominee process, and we know that. So I don't expect a lot of fireworks. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so there's not going to be, pictures of every person that has benefited from the Affordable Care Act behind people. I mean, the theater during the Barrett was wild, and I think that the Republicans really want. I mean, they keep talking about how crazy things were under Kavanaugh and Barrett, And so I think the Republicans sort of see this as an opportunity to just have a theater of adulthood and like act like responsible folks. Which, yeah, well, so the lack of fireworks are kind of the point on their side. Some of the senators clearly have more of an edge, and I would say the issue you mentioned in the last segment, some of her sentencing decisions, sounds like there at least maybe some of the senators who want to portray her as very soft on crime or having the wrong views on that. If you look back at her senior thesis as an undergraduate, it's really I found it quite a compelling collection of thoughts about plea bargaining. And she actually appeals to the founders of the country for their view about the importance of jury trials and the importance of not departing from jury trials. So it's clear that for a very long time, she has thought that the criminal justice system is it incarcerates too many people, has process that's too quick. She will be different from Justice Breyer in that respect. I think there's no question. Justice Breyer, among the more liberal justices, he was the more inclined to affirm in criminal cases, and he wanted the administrative process as it's been going on to just let it be, including, I think, the plea bargaining process. So I found it a little interesting that he had a clerk like Judge Jackson who very clearly did not have those views. And since she's become a judge, it's been clear that she hasn't had exactly the sorts of views that I think Justice Breyer had. But it seems like a relatively small point. I was not terribly encouraged that the attacks on that point were going to be particularly fair. I mean, if you've seen like the ads for judicial elections that we've had in Mississippi, you find out who they don't like, and then they accuse whoever they don't like on whatever other ground of being soft on crime. I think
one of the things that it seems like one of the things that they have to do is that they have to go after something. But I did notice there were two trains of thoughts on that, and I said earlier this morning I was going to ask you about them. Was that in the whole judicial world of at that level, there's this mindset that some judges with the mandatory sentences, some of them are near lifetime as far as child porn. And again, it's a degree of sentencing on that one. But where she has the wherewithal to make those decisions outside any set sentences, she's decreased that sentence. I wouldn't say in half, but she's probably knocked him down a little bit. And then the other train of thought that I was watching on an interview, well, that's done by a lot of judges who feel like those are too much. So, I mean, your thoughts on that one? Is it a point that the child porn laws are too heavy on some of these, or do you think that's do you think that his lights? I'm watching him on video, and a thunderstorm's beginning to hit in that area.
Yeah, I have to move enough, so my motion detector isn't quite in line with.
Oh, is that what it is? I thought a tornado was hitting or something. It scared me a little bit. All right. So address that. Do you think that's going to be anything that sticks to the negative of her, or is just opening the can of wax on anything they can find, which is normal for the opposing team?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that, again, I'm always wondering, is this the harbinger of a tough on crime, wave that people think that that's what people want? Is this, does this indicate something bad for the prospects of criminal justice reform? I think if you look at the system, and so one thing to remember, she was the head of the Sentencing Commission itself. That has the authority to set these things. They can't always change the earlier guidelines, but she has a lot of experience looking at the data about how exactly these people have been punished in the past. So those are clearly very well informed views about the sentencing practices. Our sentencing system is, I think most people concede it's kind of a mess. It was designed to get consistency between judges. But then there's all these particular characteristics that offenders have, and there's been a push to consider those. So individual judges are going to have a lot of discretion. And the people who happen to get prosecuted in federal court in D.C., I think are going to be an unusual sort of a slice of the criminal justice system. Just kind of garden variety folks for drug crimes in states. Hard to say exactly what she's going to think. I think it's safe to assume she thinks they probably get sentences that are too big, but there really isn't a lot that you can do as a Supreme Court justice.
I got you.
To change that, especially with this
law professor of the University of Mississippi, Christopher Green. I guess as hard as it is to predict what a ruling will be by the questioning as far as the Supreme Court justices, it would be equally as hard to look ahead and say 5 or 10 years after she has been a justice, whether she will lean where she is now, more left, or maybe even a little bit to the right. And that's just, I guess that's just a guessing game. But I would think that most who come in from Democrat nominees tend to stay left or go further left, and very few move to the right. Why do you think that is?
Well, yeah, once in a while you'll see people attack right a little bit. I think a lot of it has to do with the general tilt of the law schools and the legal profession. So the law schools are, I think, further left than the legal profession, but the legal profession as a whole is to the left of your median voter in America. So the American Bar Association, for instance, which collection of lawyers, and they do the certification for the law school. They've taken a bunch of positions, specifically, saying what they think the Supreme Court should do in things that they haven't done. So they're just generally there's a tilt. I think in recent years the judges have been I think they've been looking more carefully for particular signs of backbone. So they've been I think they're a little bit better at trying to figure out what the signs would be that people aren't going to drift. But you never know. One big thing we're going to find out just next year is what the judge will do in the big affirmative action case.
Absolutely.
It is interesting. She's in a biracial family. She clearly, her brother-in-law is married into the Paul Ryan family. She clearly has a lot of friends from very, very diverse perspectives. And I think, just as you say, almost everybody in D.C., runs into people from all kinds of perspectives.
Well, one thing for sure, though, she's had a very, very successful life. From Harvard, everything else. I mean, she is a tremendous success story, one way or the other. And I've often thought about this, and we talked about the old Constitution from the Founding Fathers. If you had, as an esteemed law professor, if you had a chance to redo, go back in time and be one of the Founding Fathers, and you're writing the structure for the Supreme Court, would you have the nominating process the same way, or would you change it?
Yeah, so the nominating process that we have, it really kind of began with having hearings and things in about 100 years ago with the Brandeis nomination. I don't know. So, but in the Constitution, the only thing that's baked in is it's the president and Senate together. And that has produced, for the bulk of the judiciary, a whole series of patronage systems where, the way to become a judge is to become a friend of a senator. And I guess I don't know what a difference you could make if you had. So I was just talking to a friend of mine from college who was actually appointed by the legislature itself in South Carolina. And there's something to be said for like experimentation and different mechanisms.
Yeah. That would be a good class project. I wish we had more time, but it's out, and I thank you. Always interesting and always educational, and I thank you for setting some time. And I hope the motion detector there is okay for future visits. Christopher Green, law professor, University of Mississippi.